I'm gonna just start record. I'm in a hotel. You're in your car. This is fucking amazing. Hey, Tony Blauer here, back with another episode of No Fear. I got a very, very special guest on here. Special, I mean, everyone's kind of cool and special on the show, but we've known each other. Oh my God, how many? My math is bad. How many years ago did we?
2000, right? 1999, 2000.
Yeah. And so I'm with Chris Dutch Moyer, and I'm always very reticent to talk about where people come from, what they do. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, just your background, because you'll know what words to leave out and how to dance around that.
No, thanks very much. Obviously, it's a pleasure doing this. I mentioned to you off air before, I love what you do, and I love the whole coaching aspect and spiritual stuff. And I know that we can go on and on with that in a moment. But yeah, so Dutch Moyer, 31 years United States Army, 26 in Special Operations Command. That's when we met. I was working for Special Operations Command, and we were really getting into we as a tribe, right? My Special Operations group was getting into the spear system, and Tony was right there. And I think we had a couple of training sessions before.
Yeah.
The ultimate training session was on September 11th, and we were upstairs training on the mats and whatnot, and somebody came up the ladder and said, "Oh, by the way, looks like the country's under attack, and we're being attacked in New York City." So that was one of the first times we were working together. I know.
Yeah, an amazing day of infamy, of course, and you know. It's amazing when I say special guest is because when we reconnected, it was like, oh, like I knew your name, but I didn't remember. And I think we're kind of like, dating on Instagram. And then it was like, hey, no, like I know you, I was there. And it's like, holy shit. Yeah. And, a lot of memories, as especially at the time, I'm a US citizen now, but at the time I was a foreign national, and I was fairly quickly escorted off post, and continued the training in town at my buddy Ron Don Vito's school. That was a big honor. The guys, still wanted to continue the week of training, and but what an emotional time, what a crazy time, and of course that's a little bit what I want to talk about is kind of bring everyone up to speed. And, whenever I have anyone on here, like I use these shows selfishly to talk to people that are super cool and have interesting lives. But what we try to draw out of there for listeners, and most of my listeners are, whether they're, martial artists, self-defense aficionados, combatives guys, DT guys, gun guys, CrossFit, people, all of us need to understand obstacles and managing fear, and how do we move through shit. And I can't imagine at the the tier level that you are at. One of my questions to you is like, how did you manage fear and acclimate to fear over the years? Because you've had some very crazy battles that we'll go through, from maybe initial battle of selection and getting through shit, and then deploying in actual battles there. But then you've had injuries and health battles. I don't want to kind of touch on all of that stuff, because what's so important for me is having your story inspire people listening to this, in how we all learn to adapt and manage fear.
And I love that aspect of it. And you mentioned earlier we were dating on the internet. I'm not sure we were dating, but yeah. So seeing you is back again on social media, and it was it's a strange thing, right, to be part of the social media game anyway, as far as I was concerned. And now, of course, I'm in it after 5 years of retirement. But so I know you as a coach and a professor, and it's the spear system. And when I saw the no fear stuff, that was really resonated with me, because all of us or scared somewhere, sometime, for whatever reason and whatever variable. Life is full of variables, obviously, but there's, whether it's, you know, in the gym doing that last rep because you know you're out of breath and you're tired and you just quit if you wanted to, or if it's that marathon race, or if it's that rucksack march that you're doing, that one last bit, you know, that God bless America, or if it's combat, or if it's a health issue. You know, there is plenty of fear out there, and you have to be somewhat in control of it, or you have to understand, like you mentioned, you have to understand it. You have to know it first before you can start reacting and getting through that, whether you want to, you know, the law enforcement guys like the OODA loop, whether it's an OODA loop or whatever decision-making process you use to stop the assailant or stop the ambush or get over that health issue or get through the daily drudgery of everyday life, you know, whatever.
Right. You know, what I like to remind people is, like, you know, in our programs, we ask what turns out to be a trick question for the audience. And I ask them, where's the first place you're hit in a fight? And someone in the class will always make the joke, the face, sucker punch, you know, and everyone laughs. And I tell people, no, actually the first place you're hit is your emotional system. You get a bad feeling about something. And then very, very quickly, your psychological system starts to create a movie in your mind. How's this going to go? What is this? Is it big, small, long? Is this my day? Whatever. And then the actual event starts to happen. And it's interesting. I've been sharing that metaphor, or what I think is a kind of an SOP that the neural circuitry of fear follows. And there's some research recently about, the gut being the body's second brain, and a lot of science around that. And recently I was reading a report where they said, like, your nervous system, the limbic, the amygdala, all the reptilian brain stuff picks up stuff faster than your cognitive brain. And it was sort of alluding to the same stuff that I was hypothesizing. But in my decades of interviewing victims of violence, every single one of them who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack, and that's 100% of the time. So, just piggybacking off of what you said, that you can't face whatever your next battle is if you don't kind of acknowledge the fear and somehow cultivate a relationship with it, right? And does that resonate? Does that make sense to you?
100%. Training obviously helps. Training helps immensely. Whatever you're training for, that helps immensely. But to know yourself and to know that you're going to be in this situation, you're going to be scared. You're going to be scared, but you're going to have to control some of that to be able to steer the car away from the tree, or to apply those things that you learned. Again, whether it's a driving school thing, or, can you make that? Do you understand how, when I make the inertia, the energy is moving forward, and what to do next, or this and this, a combat environment, when okay, these are the things you can plan all day for, the things that are going to happen, but you cannot. It's very difficult to when we start what we call the two-way range, when guys are shooting back at you, you're shooting those people. You have to control that, and there's a great scene about fear. I think really the whole episode is about fear in the Band of Brothers series, and it's a fantastic. Everybody's scared, everybody,
right?
But you're going to have to figure out a way to control it. And I tell guys now in training, I said, here's the thing: you don't want to do it for you, that's fine. Do it for the guy next to you, because your rifle is his shield. In this kind of combat, it's not a phalanx, it's not a Roman phalanx, it's not the Greek hoplites, but hey, my rifle is your shield, period. When you're looking the other way, or when we do a team event, right? You're doing one thing, I'm doing another, but to integrate that fire, to have overlapping sectors of fire, et cetera, I depend on you, and you need to depend on me. So we're gonna have to control that fear and work through it.
Right. I dig that. I think one of the most important things, refreshing things here, and it's what actually spawned my No Fear, KNOW, fear journey, path, and mission is I always made the joke. You remember the No Fear company, the adrenaline company, it was like motocross biking, so extreme sports. So
yeah, that's some great shirts. There's some great memes.
Yeah, great slogans, great design. So I always make this joke when I'm doing my No Fear seminar. I go, like when I grew up, I was born in the 60s and I grew up and I thought I had more fear than everyone else, whether I was in a gymnastics competition, skiing, wrestling, boxing, martial art tournament. I'd look around at everybody and it's weird. We don't, when you're, in that vortex of fear, you look around and all you see all the people around you, and it never occurs to you that they're scared shitless too. Because as alpha males, as type A's, we don't talk like I'm not, not going to be like in a stack with you going, hey, by the way, I fucking have to shit and piss and I'm scared to death. You just don't say that. And I remember bringing this up. I was at working with, I think it was Houston SWAT, or I forget, one SWAT team in Texas. And I'm there. I mean, me, I'm not a conventional instructor. I get into this like deep mindset shit. And I asked this team, I said, hey, do you want to know if your point man is scared? And someone immediately answers, if he's scared, he shouldn't be on fucking point. What's he doing on the team? I go, do you want to know if he's, getting a divorce from his wife and had a fight and was up all night? Do you want to know if he found out that his daughter's on drugs? Do you want to know any of this shit? And people are like, no, I don't want to know shit. I mean, you keep that personal shit as personal. I go, wait a minute. What if he's so fucked up about personal shit, it compromises his ability to threat discriminate, his clarity in the moment, right? Like, you want to know that shit. I said, listen, you guys, I'm just Angelo Dundee. I'm behind the ropes and you're in the fucking ring. Right? But I would say, Dutch, I'd say, I would want to know that shit. And I would want to have that transparency if I was running the team. And I would say, hey, listen, if you're not 110%, fucking stay back, because we all want to go. Right. And, it was interesting pushing them to acknowledge those, because a magic thing happens when you admit that you're afraid and then you move towards the danger. You develop a relationship with fear, and now you're starting, instead of it being like a heavy weight, something that's throttling you, you might be able to use it as fuel. You can find some indignation, some anger, or some acceptance.
100%. One of the things that we do really, really well is close quarter battle, and that's whether it's from the opening door, portal, breach, whatever you want to call it, throughout the last piece of the structure, you have to be surprising whomever is in the next room, in the next portal, through the next thing, whatever that might be. You have to surprise them. You cannot be surprised by what's happening back there. So it was funny, and you just mentioned the thing about the guy and the issues that he may or may not have, or whoever that team member might have. So I just got done training the Lubbock County SWAT guys, and they were great. But one of the things I said, who's the youngest guy? And of course, there's 20 dudes on the team. Somebody raised his hand and said, I said, do you know anything about him? Do you know he's the youngest? Who doesn't know he's the youngest? Who doesn't know what he likes and what he dislikes? I said, not only you want to know that because tomorrow when you go through the breach, his life may be extinguished and you're going to feel bad that you don't know anything about him, but right. You need to know the things that make him roll. So let's get together. Let's find out everything we can about these people, right? They're your people. This is your combat tribe. And then you talk about getting ready for the mission, right? And then you put all those things in small boxes. I think there's been psychological talk about how a man can put things, he's got a waffle brain, so he puts them in little boxes. I believe this to be true, but and there's another movie out there somewhere about how a guy stuffs things away and he puts it into a box. Certainly before you make that initial breach, you better have those things put back in a box, because now this job depends on you. Your periphery goes from small to large at any moment in the structure. And yeah, you got to put that back somewhere else.
Right.
So you can get in there and do that job again, because this is a team event. My rifle is your shield, period. That's all. That's what happens, when this thing starts rolling.
I agree, and I dig it. Was there anything when, we've all had spiritual guides and mentors, and and it could be a book you read. I've read things in books that where I stared at that page and then rewrote it and memorized it, and like that's like that metaphoric spiritual moment where you go, wow, that sentence changed my life. One of them, like when I started doing what I was doing, I was teaching conventional boxing and kick and taekwondo and wrestling. And so that was like 13 years before MMA. And I was just doing this in my garage because it made sense to do stuff. And one of my students got his ass kicked. And you might have heard the story in another podcast, but it was 1980. He got his ass kicked. And he got his ass kicked at school where the bully had tripped him. He got up, he mouthed off, and the guy shoved him. And until then, it had been verbal abuse, no physical. And I told this 15-year-old kid, Mitch, who I was training, I was like, dude, like if he puts his hands on you, that's, until now, the school's not doing anything. Everyone's being a pussy about it. Just avoid him. Because I was training him. His dad was paying me to train him. And he didn't want him to get impacted by, we know now what chronic bullying can do to people. And, but now it went physical. The guy shoved him, and Mitch grabbed him and slammed him against a locker bank. And it was like, don't fucking touch me. What's your problem? And the guy sucker punches him while Mitch is asserting. And I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean he sucker punched you? Like, why didn't you slip? Why didn't you parry? Why didn't you check it? Why didn't you do this? And he says, anyone who's listened to the show has heard this story like 100 times already, even though there's only 60 episodes, they've heard it 100 times. But what Mitchell had done is when he got angry, he grabbed the guy by the shirt, slammed him, and he had his books in his fucking hand holding his shirt. So visualize that. Like someone goes to sucker punch you there, your hands are tied up. Never compromise your hands, right? No. And but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story was a quote that I read a couple years later, memorized. Because that day that Mitchell got attacked, I took personal responsibility for his loss. And he apologized to me, Dutch. He said, I'm sorry I let you down, coach. I didn't do anything you told me. And I was like, it was like the God of self-defense fucking hit me in the head. And I realized we teach self-defense wrong. And that was the day that I changed. And that became my journey, my path that led to the way we do scenario-based training, the way we do ballistic microfight, the evolution and development of high gear, the whole spear system. None of that was happening back in 1980. But what happened was, and I'm going to tie this to fear, is I started teaching and talking a completely different way. And the community, the martial art industry was mocking me. Like, what is this? Because I would do everything off balance. I'd say in a real fight, you're off balance emotionally, psychologically, and physically. So let's replicate being off balance on purpose. Let's do things from where we're physically surprised. We're psychologically surprised. Let's not do things like on a flat range. Let's do things dynamically. And let's do it from a position of disadvantage so that off balance becomes on balance through the process of learning. And all of this to say, while I was doing this, I was in my early 20s, and I didn't realize it, but I was insecure as a businessman. I was insecure because I was forging new ideas. And when I would see well-known martial artists criticize or mock, and it would get back to me. A letter would get back to me. A comment would get back to me. There's no internet back then. And I remember being really worried about, am I doing this wrong? How do I get people to like me? This is bullshit. And I read this quote. That whole story was about this quote, because my question to you is to share some of those moments. It could have been a teacher, a trainer, a colleague, but the quote I read was, it was a obscure film director said, if you take your space, the world must make place for you. If you take your space, the world, and it so spoke to me. It's like, I've got to go forward without people's permission. I really believe in the mission, and I've got to do the right thing. But fear was holding me back from doing the right thing. And I kept that was like one of the things that really kept me going. This is in the early 80s. So when you were in military over 30 years, there had to have been times when you're scared shitless, and someone, like any amazing quotes or thoughts or experiences, stories like that you know, that had that person not been there whispering in your ear, you might have fucking tapped out? Or is that not your personality?
During the moment, I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't know if I can find a quote during the moment, except for knowing that I really you had to do this job, and if you didn't do it for yourself, I quickly realized, look, we're on a integral part of this whole gear, this whole thing is, this machine is filled with gears. Yours is a gear, whatever, or a cog in the gear, whatever you want to call it. But right. In the end, you had to do it for the other dude. You really do. If you care about these sons of bitches, and if you want to drink a beer with them in the team room when everything's finished, you have to do it for them. When I was younger, I did a little bit of Army time, and I got out. I stayed affiliated with National Guard, and I came back, and I read a book by William Buckley, and the book was called Gratitude. And some of the philosophies and ideas about that book really resonated with me and stayed with me. And when I rejoined the Army, as an infantryman, as a ranger, and then up to Special Operations Command. But it really fueled my desire to try to give back and to give gratitude, to understand, okay, look, these people that came before us, whether Revolutionary War soldiers and sailors, Marines, and then same thing with the Civil War, and go on and on, this level of gratitude that the men that came before me, and all I wanted to do was to be able to test my mettle and not let someone down. That's what I want to do, and try to give back. And I don't think it's necessarily the same answer to the same question you had there, but just never wanted to let anybody down, kind of thing.
No, that's fair, and it's good, and it's honest. And did you always know that you wanted to serve the country or do something to, in this capacity? Yes,
I did. When I was, I grew up on Vic Morrow and that combat series. You may have seen those when you were younger, because you and I aren't too different in age. Or World War II movies, when I was a kid, I studied all kinds of stuff like that, and I would be in the sandbox, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a armor crewman. I wanted to drive around in tanks and smash stuff, or I wanted to be an infantryman, and it all worked out for me in the end. I got to be both.
Nice. Good. Obviously there's certain things that I never push people to talk about things they don't want to talk about, but I always try to bring it into the I think coming full circle on something that we talked about right in the beginning is hearing you say that everyone's afraid. It's semantics, right? At that point where someone goes, "Where's my lucky rabbit?" That's fear. Athletes, are the most superstitious, and superstition is fear, right? It's semantics. I remember actually, coming down for one of the training gigs down at Bragg, came down a couple of days early and met some guys at a coffee shop, and they were like, "Hey, let's go jumping," and they were talking about skydiving, and I'm like jumping up and down, you mean? They're like, no, it means skydiving. I said, no, I'm good. And they said, aren't you like Mr. Fear Management? And I was like, yeah, I'm managing my fear by not jumping out of an airplane right now. Aren't I good? And they laughed. And I said, listen, I've done it twice. I did static, and then I did a tandem jump from like 12,000 feet. And I'm afraid of heights. So I know that I can manage my fear to jump out of an airplane because I did it twice. And I said, you don't have any fear when you do it? And it was like one of those guys, and I don't know, you might be like that, but I knew guys that didn't like doing it, but they did it to maintain a qualification because it was just one of the things you had to do. And then there were guys who friggin' jump like all the time. And I said to him, I said, do you have any fear when you do it? He says, no, man, I freaking love it. I said, then let me pack your chute for you today. And by the way, I don't know anything about packing a chute. So he went, fuck that shit. You're not touching my chute. And I looked at him and I said, that, my friend, is fear, right? It's all we've got our own little superstitions, but it's semantics in my mind. I just think the word fear has a bad rap, which is why I love using the acronyms of false evidence appearing real and false expectations appearing real.
No, I love it. And it's, I was one of those guys, by the way. So when I first started jumping out of an airplane, I jumped static line, just like most guys do, starting off with that, and that's fine. You go through rituals, you train, and then, you're scared, you're nervous, you jump out of a tower in basic airborne school or whatever, then you're finally jumping out of a moving aircraft. Then later on, you become a jump master if you do, and then you're managing other people's fear along with your own. You want to make sure that everyone jumps out well and doesn't hurt themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll tell you a quick anecdotal story about that. I was a jump master at the time, and first of the 75th Ranger Regiment out of Savannah, Georgia, and we were on a jump, and there was a young man in there. When you're in a stick, so imagine right there, you're tight in a C-130 aircraft. Everybody's tight in there. Everybody's already stood up, and they already have their static lines hooked up and ready to go. They got their elbows out. They want to pass that static line off to the safety guy to make sure it's unimpeded by anything. You don't want that static line attached to your body or wrapped around your arm. Of course, it'll rip your bicep out, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some redundancy built into these systems, of course. The Army loves redundancy. The military does. The static line hook goes over top of the static line cable that is affixed to the aircraft on the inside that cannot move. And that static line, your static line, of course, is going to pull the parachute, for those out there who don't know that, but I think everybody pretty much does. Now, there's a little hook, there's a little pin, rather, that goes through there. And it stops the static line itself from opening back up over the cable, right? So it's redundant. It already goes down, it snaps over top of that, and it's locked in. But you could feasibly push that in and remove it. Well, the little static line, static line stab hook pin, whatever this is, the cotter pin basically goes through a little hole, and it doesn't allow the static line to come off of the static line cable. And this young man, how many times he jumped? I don't know, 3, 4, 5, whatever. He's got to have more than 5 because that's out of the airborne school. So he's got maybe 10, whatever he's got. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs to telling me, hey, Sergeant, I don't have a pin. My pin's gone. And as a jump master, quite often you carry these pins, came off. They're a little tied with a 550 cord. They would come off of there. And so I have some in my boot as a safety, and I come over there and I tell the kid, I said, we're really close. We're already, now he failed to mention it whatever, a long time ago, whatever it was, but now he's excited about it, but it's not there, and we're already, hey, stand by, drop something coming up. And I told him, son, you don't need it. And he had his face was white. I said, I got this. So quickly, and I'm not a great tire, so I'm not a great non-tire. So I quickly put it in there, I got it done in time, and then boom, the guys took off. But the funny thing was, right, the next day or so, maybe it was 2 days later, 3 days later, I saw him in the quad, and he was so thankful that I was able to conduct this thing for him, to put this pin in here. And it was just a funny thing. I never got it before. I didn't treat it. I didn't treat that little bit of fear that way in my own mind before. I knew this was a redundant process, but it really helped him to get through that piece, whatever that was. And some people deal with this thing differently. This whole wonderful monster called fear.
That's I think one of the biggest things with my push lately is to I make a joke when I work with a lot of coaches, and I tell them, I say respectfully, and please don't take this the wrong way, most of you are not coaches, most of you are trainers. And they look, and I go, everyone calls himself a coach because that's the name. It's like, oh, I'm a black belt. But like a real good black belt will tell you he's just a beginner. He's really just learning now that he's a black belt. And some people think that's lip service, but it's that kind of like beginner's mind thing of like, what can I am constantly trying to learn new things. And I do that not by like putting my hand in a hat with a bunch of things in it and pulling out going, oh, I'm going to learn this. I do it where where in life, if there's a word I don't know, or a country or a thing, and I go, I don't really know a lot about that. If I have time, I try to learn more, so I have some more competency with just the idea. And so I've got this always a kind of this what's I guess termed these days as a growth mindset. How do I get better? But like that day in the C-130, if he might have, like, if you had just pushed him and said you don't need it, I mean, you could have pretended to put the pin in. If you thought it was there, it was the placebo effect, right? I mean, that's the redundancy. Yep. It's a placebo. He'd have been okay. But it's just that idea that very often we just need that. And this is a subtle thing. So when I do a lot of stuff with military, with law enforcement, when I get, we've got all sorts of different courses, but when I get involved, it's really trying to get people to understand that a coach inspires performance and looks at the individual and understands that. And I look at, like, if I see someone's potential and they're not behaving to what we look at as their potential, if they're already at high level, it's got to be all mindset at that point. On game day, you're not a different athlete. So it's, what are you thinking about, just before you jump? What are you thinking about just before you, kick down that door? What are you thinking about as your fingers on the trigger? And it's that clarity, that flow, and anything else from there is a distraction. But I look at it, what I'm trying to get people to do is, like, if you peel the onion and you ask the question, why? Well, why is that? Why is that? Eventually you're going to get to a point where you have no answer. And I look at it as that some stimulus creates a moment of doubt, and doubt unchecked becomes this can build into this anxiety and this hesitation. And it doesn't have to be the anxiety of, like, when someone goes anxiety, like right away our brain goes to like a panic attack, anxiety. If you're worrying about the outcome of something, that's defined as anxiety. I'm anxious about what, and it could be, you could be I've been in fighters rooms, boxers, kickboxers, MMA rooms, and you've got, one guy lying there with headphones on, and he's just chilling. And then there's someone else pacing, punching his face. Someone else is there, and his leg is bouncing 100 miles an hour, and he's sitting on the bench, and he's, and everyone is distracting themselves before the bell. And this is all, how we deal with fear. And I think that if, my goal, my mission now is, like, I got this pretend book that I'm never going to write, but I got the title, and it's like, cheering isn't coaching. So yelling at people, come on, you can do it. Fuck, let's go. Like, like
cheerleader.
Yeah, we don't need that. We need, we need people to understand that neural circuitry of fear more. I want to get to a couple of your injuries without getting too graphic, because I'm not good with that shit. But what was, if you can discuss, what was I don't want to use the word scary because it's kind of a little lame. And you've already described a couple of times, like, hey, when you're in the zone and you're going, you're just going. You're like, so there's no fear. But was there a time that you can remember when you were deployed and something started to happen where you went, fuck, here we go, or this is it, and then you turn it around? And if
yes,
it is, can you talk about it?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, early days. Well, I could give a couple different examples too. And if we go back to somewhere in there and talk about what it's like being a bus rider, and if you remember that right there, we'll go back to it. But to be, a bus rider on the thing, and then how do you control that fear? But yes, so 2004 time frame-ish, 2003 might have been. We're doing operations in Fallujah, and as some of you folks out there know, Fallujah was a place that was notoriously just really shitty, bad area. Al Qaeda, Al Qaeda in Iraq had a lot of fun there, whatever. We were coming out, we did a piece of work and everything was fine, and we're on the main avenue heading back east towards Baghdad, and we get ambushed. One of the trucks is caught on fire. The enemy's firing rockets over and over at us. And, you know, again, we're blessed because they weren't very good aim. But yeah, once the explosion went off, our truck was affected. The truck in front of us was majorly affected. And we had 2 guys for sure that we thought were already dead. And so, yeah, that was, well, now we're caught in an ambush. But things flowed for me. I was able to, one of the things that helped me big time was I had to provide a laser pointer we had a large crew served weapon on our truck, a 50 caliber. And another guy was working that, right? A guy with less maturity than I did from a different element. Well, he's a ranger. But he was a great kid.
Right.
But I had to guide him on targets in order to help save the convoy's life. You know what I mean? So here's a large caliber weapon that can deal with most anything. And I was just guiding him to separate targets on the northern side of the ambush line. And, you know, we'd see them, we'd shine them, we'd eliminate them, and keep going through that whole.
Yeah. Hey, your audio just cut out, man. Stand by. Hey, Dutch. Your audio just cut out. Crap. Hey, your last minute of audio is gone.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. And now I didn't hear it here, so I don't know if the audience heard it. I'm guessing they didn't. It was probably the most dramatic part of what you were saying. The last 30 seconds.
Do you know what the last word was?
Yeah, when you were saying that you were laser guiding him over the North Ridge.
I could just cover that whole thing again.
Yep, do it just in case.
You want to? Yes.
Please.
Yeah. So there was a night, or it was either late 2003, early 2004. I think it was 2003 late. We were ambushed in Fallujah, and a lot of folks out there know that Fallujah back then was not a great place to be, not a place you want to take your spring break. Al-Qaeda in Iraq had a lot of folks there working Fallujah pretty hard. Anyway, we had done some action in Fallujah when everything was fine, and we were coming out of the road that was an east-west running road headed back to Baghdad, where our mission support site was, and we were ambushed. One of the trucks was hit by IED, it caught on fire. Our truck was affected in a minor way. Looking through my night vision goggles too, looking at this truck that was completely engulfed in flames, knowing that all my friends are in there. That was the fuck moment you just described. It was like, fuck, we got to go get these guys out of this burning truck. And before that happens, though, we got to get off the X, right? We got to get off the X. We got to get out of the ambush zone. And the enemy's firing rockets at us. Thank God they were poor aim because the rockets didn't hit us. But so to calm down, you know, I have to start engaging targets, and also I'm helping out my gunner, who was a ranger assigned to our machine gun. It was a 50 caliber machine gun, so that is a powerful weapon, obviously, that can deal with a lot of issues. And we would work in tandem. I would shine on the enemy fire. He would eliminate it. We'd move on to the next one and continue on down the line. And that certainly helped you focus, right? You're back into doing exactly what you're trained to do.
Right.
And nervous as all hell. Yeah, scared, you bet. You just saw a truck almost explode, whatnot. And in the end, you know, we dealt a lot of damage to the enemy. We called in our air support. And the 2 guys that were wounded that I really thought were dead. And the truck, in the end, it turned out to be not engulfed in flames. It was covered in diesel fuel on the outside, so it looked like it was engulfed in flames. But we got the guys out of there, and the 2 guys that were severely wounded ended up surviving the conflict. So it turned out to be okay. But yeah, that was a moment.
You know, a lot of times we were talking about the difference between a trainer and a coach and trying to get people to understand. You guys go through tremendous amounts of training, and you're put into real high stress scenarios in advance of the actual event. and you're stress inoculating. You're getting your body mind to adapt to that. And we talk about, like, I'll ask the question, what's the difference between choking and freezing, or is it semantics? And people who aren't, never really thought about this go, no, it's semantics. And I go, no, the untrained person freezes, the trained person chokes. Like like a baseball player choked at the plate. The basketball player, he's got to drop this, free throw. He chokes. Tiger Woods chokes on, and so, and there's lots of cops and military personnel that they were trained and they didn't make it happen. At a certain level, and it's still fascinating to me, you and other people could have hid or run, or every man for himself, and you take off, but you stay there, and it's like, built into you, drilled into you, you're there to protect your brothers in arms, and your rifle's their shield, and you know what to do. We talk about golden rules, and I have guys memorize is, first thing shit starts to happen, you got to accept it. Because, when you go into denial, like if you take a minute to go, I don't believe this is happening, like you're never going to get that second back. As quickly as you can, accept what's happening. Then the next thing is to get challenged, which is that mindset of, fuck this. It's like you said, I loved what you said before, that you're going through the house, you're surprising the guy on the other side of the room. He's got to be going, what the fuck, when you come through the door. And then the last thing is to never stop thinking. Don't stop thinking. Those three things. And it sounds like, everyone's got their own way to explain that and articulate that, but that's exactly what happened. Your training kicked in. You've got the fear spikes that can interrupt and distract, but you swat them away, like just mentally, so fuck it, we got to do this. And you start deploying, all your training. So that's fucking cool, man. I'm glad everyone.
Yeah, I think SLA Marshall might have started that back in the day, or at least observed it anyway. And back in before World War II and then after World War II, SLA Marshall did a whole lot of research. SLA, thanks. And you knew that training had to change. You couldn't just go to the flat range. You couldn't just shoot the land of the flat people, is what we say on occasion, just flat targets. And you have to do harder, more realistic training. And that even in that respect, right, our training evolved big time from 1999, even as a ranger, 1993, 1992. That training evolved greatly because of, primarily 92, 93, 94, nothing was really happening.
Right.
And then the war kicks off, and then you're constantly in the war, and two kinds of people were in the Army back then. People that had gone to war or were going to be. And, training evolved immensely. How many, all kinds of different reasons. The ammunition for the weapon. Where are you firing that weapon with regards to on the target itself? Is it the hydraulic zone? Is it the CNS? Your zero for the weapon, how does it change? Tactics slightly, but not, most of the stuff stayed the same. But we had to think about really the different, what kind of mission is this right now? Like you said, you're always thinking that whether it's the OODA loop or whatever that is you're using as a vehicle, but yes, you're constantly evaluating, reevaluating, acting. What do you have to do now during this situation? And it constantly changes. And it's okay. Like you said earlier too, Coach, you talk about learning something new every day, or just evolving in that learning process. I knew a guy in Savannah 175, and he said, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna go somewhere else. And I said, why? He said, well, I can't learn anything anymore. And I was older than he was, so I was more mature, I guess, to a degree. But I couldn't understand that about a mature male. I learn something new every day, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm driving down the road, or if I'm observing something, or if I'm interacting with another human at the feed supply shop, it doesn't matter. There's something to learn every day. And if you come to some mindset where you're done with something because you can't learn anymore, I don't know where that puts you, but
right.
Yeah. So yeah, always learning, always doing something.
So you've had a couple of let's turn this into like a different, a more personal battle. You had a pretty serious injury. That was a training injury. The
2000 injury was a training injury. Yes, sir. Yep.
You want to?
Yeah. So in 2000, we're prepping for a mission. We're prepping for a mission, and the initial mission was, okay, look, you're going to stop this car. You're going to stop it with some sort of vehicle stopping device. And then we had a relatively new device at the time, and it was a hollow charge weapon fired out of your rifle. The Israelis came up with it. Was called a Simon device. So this was a standoff breaching tool that you would fire from your rifle. You'd have to rejack your rifle and reset the mechanism inside. But that first round shoots the hollow charge weapon, and it fires that thing 25, 30 meters to a door, and it blows down that door. That was the initial design for the weapon. So, we said, what about we want to disable a car at a roadblock? What could we do with this? So we decided to test it on the motor. We tried to test it on the drivetrain in the front, and sure enough, you fire this thing, and it would surely break the front wheels. It would disable the motor. So all good. Well, we did some practice runs, and off we went. Later on, the mission changed for my people, and they said, listen, if this car gets through the roadblock where you're going to be, it's okay to eliminate everybody in the vehicle completely. So, that took a little bit of pressure off as far as target discrimination, but at the same time, we didn't know what this device would do to, things in the car. So we put some targets in the car, went back down range, and we practiced some more. And we really, because it was such a new thing, we really didn't know where we needed to be, shallow, the angle, and et cetera, et cetera. So I fired this Simon device at a car. It was a rather large sedan that we had down there. And the driver's side skin of the car door came right off and smashed me in my face. So it broke my neck, it broke my jaw, I lost 6 teeth. And immediately I didn't know what was happening. I took a knee, and it was funny that the medic came over and said, how you doing? I tried to get up, and I said, I'm good. But I wasn't nowhere near good. Then pretty much after that, I passed out. And before I passed out, he said, get in the truck, get in Humvee. We got to take you to the clinic. And of course we went. And a little bit later, I had surgery. So.
Wow. So you took a knee after getting your neck broken?
Yeah. It was a minor neck break, but it's still broken neck. It was one of the.
I was being fucking facetious, man. It's like, is that all you got? I'm going to take a knee. I'm going to take a knee count to it, right? Wow.
I spit up some teeth. I spit out some blood, and I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And no, I wasn't. So.
Right, but there's that mindset, man. Right? Keep moving.
Get up. That's you know what? There was there's a hockey reference to that lately, and I wondered. I can't remember who the hockey player was now, but it was I love hockey, and it's hockey season, and right now the Stanley Cup's the finals going on, but it was during the semifinals or the quarter that a goalie got hit with a puck from a slap shot high into his shoulder collarbone area, and it probably hurt really bad, and he went down. And if the team that the goalie's on, if that defending team snatches up that puck, they'll hit the whistle and you can reset it. But he laid out and stayed laid out. I'm not sure if he was trying to get a penalty or not. I don't know. It's not for me to say, maybe. But and then the offensive team snatched up the puck and scored. And I'm like, dude, get up. I know it hurts. It really hurts. I get it, but you got to get up, man. You got to get up. And it was kind of funny that nobody had covered it. And I kind of wanted to be one of those people that calls in and says, hey, what the hell? Get up. Nothing was wrong with your legs.
Right.
I hurt like hell. I got it, but you got to get up.
you must you ever watch soccer highlights when they oh my God. Yeah. But they're pretty fucking funny. You had another battle again, personal attack. Let's talk about that.
I had a couple back surgeries too in between all that stuff, and I was finally released right before the terrorists struck the towers. But yes, in 2009, I was struck with a gastrointestinal stromal tumor. It's a cancerous tumor. Somehow it was in my body for quite a while. We don't know how long. And then on Memorial Day weekend, oh, by the way, it's my 10th year anniversary, just about 2 days ago. This tumor erupted, and I was going septic for a couple of days. Typical hard SF guy, whatever, like, something's wrong with me. I got to go to the hospital. Okay, but what is it? I don't know. Long story short, they said it was kidney stones. I said, okay. So I figured I'd drink a bunch of water and cranberry juice. And I sat around and watched automobile racing. On Monday, right before the weekend is over, I noticed that I was distending. My back was larger than it should have been. And I'm like, hey, I'm distending. Tomorrow we'll go to the clinic. And typically, it should have went right away. I was dying from the inside on Friday, and
wow.
And I guess it's kind of a cool story now, but it was kind of foolish, honestly. But then we went to the clinic, and I got there, and about 30 minutes later, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon or so. 30 minutes later, I was in the ER, and I'm telling you, Tony, it was like I'm laying back. I just drank some contrast, but I'm watching my abdominal wall like a second hand on a clock as it grew bigger and bigger. And I said, are you seeing this? Who is seeing this? Look how bizarre this is, and happening. And Jason Hiles was my internal surgeon, and he was a J-mouth surgeon, and he said, hey, how's things going? And I said, well, you got a screwdriver or something you can pop in here and relieve some of this pressure. I'll be much obliged. Other than that, it's all in your hands now. And this is going back. Can I go back to the bus thing?
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Please. Yeah. Please go. The audio glitched for a second, but we're good.
All right, cool. So that ER room, right? And I'm growing bigger, and I personally can't do anything about it. There was a calm over me, right? I don't know why. I can't do anything about it. I am now a bus rider, right? This is the bus that I'm riding in is going to crash. I have done everything I can do. Looking at Jason, now it's in his hands, right? Now it's up to you. So I'm on the longest air assault raid in the history of military operations, and we're flying in Afghanistan. And I'm scared. I'm completely scared. You talked about that before. I mean, you said shit or piss, whatever you said 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. I had to piss on that aircraft like 3 times. You piss bags, throw them out the window. So, but I did everything I could. I was an assistant breacher at the time. I did everything I could to help out my guy and the charge and everything else. And I'm sitting down on the floor. I'm looking at the back end of the chopper, and I'm watching us fly Napa over the earth. And there's gun trucks, and they're shooting at us. I'm going, wow, they're shooting at us. Yeah, but what do I do now? I'm a bus rider. I can't affect it. So now it's up to the pilots, and it's up to whatever power decides that we are going to live or die today. And it's a kind of funny thing, but then it's honestly right then, I wasn't scared anymore. I'd done the things I needed to do.
Right.
And now it was up to the bus driver. And the same thing with the surgery. It was funny. They gave me 5 years to live after that. And now it's my 10th year anniversary. So
congrats, man.
Thanks, brother. One of the funny things that came out of that whole thing was when Jason came in one day, it was a couple of days later, and says, listen, the size of the tumor and the way the cells are, et cetera, et cetera. He said it's a 5-year sentence. And, we sat around, felt sorry for ourselves a little bit, I guess, my family and I. And then I was asked, how come you're not angry? And I said, I got to be honest with you, philosophically, spiritually, I don't care who you are, but I never, all through my career, if I did something well, I never asked how come I did it well. I never asked how come I got a favor and how come this worked out for me? I never asked that. So if something befell me poorly like this, what am I going to do? I'm not going to ask why it happened to me. I'm just going to deal with that. I didn't want to be cavalier about it. I understood it was a serious deal, but I just, to confront that kind of fear, I said, if it's true, it's going to be 5 years and we're going to have a great time. And if it's not 5 years, then we'll crush it. We'll make it better. In the end, I don't believe the demographic was built around me. It wasn't built around my mindset. It wasn't built around my physical body. It was old men. It was old women. It was little babies, whatever it was. I wasn't part of the demographic. It wasn't going to even address it.
That's a very, very, very important statement. Very, very important. That's heavy, man. I love that. It wasn't built around me. I'm not their demographic. I love that. Wow. The 10-year anniversary this weekend, right?
Yeah, just passed. So Memorial Day weekend was a great and solemn weekend for me, of course, celebrating the men who died I knew, and then 10-year anniversary of the cancer thing. So,
that's actually crazy, because one of my questions for you, not knowing the anniversary of the surgery and all that, one of my questions was, what's Memorial Day weekend like for you? Because it's I mean, I've been around enough of you guys for enough years, and I'm not part of that. I'm honored and flattered to through osmosis get a little bit of inspiration from the courage and stature that you all have. I'm like a little kid. When I go on a post or a base, man, I contain it a lot, but I'm in awe of all you guys. And but I was going to ask you, what's that like? Because there's people that are in many ways closer to you than your closest family. When you're deploying with guys like that, and so, and I didn't know, obviously, like that's a big weekend for you.
Yeah, it's I try to, if I'm in town, if I'm not training somebody else somewhere else, I'm in town. I'm here on Bragg, and I go to a special ceremony, and we recount those men and honor their sacrifice. It was Patton who said we shouldn't be sad that these people died. He said men. I'm not going to not include women, of course, but I am talking about specifically. I'm talking about some men, but he said we shouldn't be sad these men died, but we should be grateful that they lived, and that's really what we focus on. And when it comes down to it, all of us were a fantastic tribe, a fantastic family, and it's not hyperbole when I tell you that to me they are closer to me than my brothers. My brothers are close to me to a degree, but nowhere near as close as these guys were. It's whether it's the man camp that you went to over and over again, whether it's Afghanistan or Iraq, and then you suffered well together as a tribe. I firmly believe that creates bonds that will never ever go away.
No, I agree. Wow. I kind of want to wrap on that, but I do want to ask you about, because that was heavy and it was spiritual, but I do want to ask you about your life after the Army. You're doing important things now. You've got a training company, and you're helping, current first responders and others, polish their skill set. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now, what the goals are for you, for your company.
Yeah, I've really, I'm working for a couple of different companies, and I'm working for myself as well. And when I do work for myself, which just recently, again, I talked about the guys in Lubbock County. I've trained guys in Orlando, and then Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and Terre Haute, Indiana, all great family friends of mine now. I go back to Lubbock again and become part of their special tribe and family. But that's what we do. So I focus on law enforcement officers and military folks, pretty much rifle, pistol, close quarter battle. Everything comes under the umbrella of leadership anyway. Once you're the same way. When you start doing, if you call your course SPEAR or which one, whatever course you're teaching that day, whatever it might be, you always have subheadings to different parts of the training aspect. And then it's the same thing with us. So, if you're a rifle, pistol, CQB course, okay, fine. Just call it a CQB course if you want to. And then all these small subheadings fall underneath that, but leadership always finds its way to the top. You're always mentoring and talking to these men about what happens in a combat situation. Because even most of these SWAT guys, very rare that, they're shooting back at them. On occasion, it does happen, of course. And some of the constabularies in small towns or close to the border, they have more cartel references or drug references. So they do have more danger involved in that. But yeah, it's what we do. Try to focus on leadership and giving back to that part of the community, whether it's military folks that are strapping it on and going to fight the good fight now in Southwest Asia or Africa or wherever, or law enforcement guys and girls throughout the United States. So that's it for now. And we didn't cover the SPEAR thing in real life. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, go for it. Please.
Why I don't know how we put it together, but I had done a mission, and I talked to you about this before. And early in the days that I knew you and what you were doing, I was a bit of a curmudgeon. I was a skeptic. We had some senior guys with more maturity that were ahead of their time, as you were, and into the program. And okay. But I started to filter my way into the program, and then I, of course, enjoyed it, and I did believe it. So I'm in Iraq, and we're on a small mission, and we have a smaller contingent. The main force is doing something else. We were in support of the target the main force was doing. And I'm telling you, the personality we were after was some intermediate to high level guy. When I say low, high level, obviously, if you take a high level, if you take 20 guys on a high level force, he might have been number 20 or 18, somewhere in there. But to not be surprised by someone, again, we talked about that earlier, and then to have that ability to check and snatch him up. We're putting the charge on the door, getting ready to come through the door, and obviously he heard us, and he opens the door, and there he is. And I'm like, again, trying to use the whole idea of never be surprised, but surprising him. And he said, "What?" And right away I could use that a check system, snatch him up, and I actually used a jiu-jitsu technique to stick him over in the corner and have somebody else take care of him. And then we flooded into the house and did a thing, and he turned out to be the guy we were after. But it was I never ever forgot your training, and that was bam right in my face, and it was pretty intense.
Nice, very nice.
It's pretty cool.
Very cool. Okay, man, what's the best way for, we got a lot of law enforcement listening to our show. If somebody wants to look you up online or website, what are the best ways to, aside from, searching for Chris Dutch Moyer, Moyer, what's your website, Instagram, all that crap?
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I don't have a website yet, so that's very strange, right? Or I probably should have a website in order to have an electronic calling card or electronic business card, I guess. I started to do that a couple different times, and it didn't work out, so I abandoned the idea. But I honestly get a lot of stuff through LinkedIn and a lot of stuff through Instagram.
Okay.
And yeah, Chris Dutch Moyer is Dutch Chris Moyer on Instagram. Yep. And Chris Moyer or Chris Dutch Moyer on LinkedIn. But it's a funny thing. I have a Facebook thing too, and it's attached to the Instagram thing, but I don't go to the Facebook.
Right.
But apparently, now with social media the way it is, yeah, if you post something on Instagram, you ask it to post it on Facebook, it happens. Right. So that's how people reach me now. So
nice. Okay, man. Well, it was very, very cool catching up. it's hopefully we'll see each other at some. Do you ever get to any tactical events and teach stuff, or you're just doing stuff privately and through the company?
The last tactical event I did, and I was able to teach a little bit, was the TTPOA, which is the Texas Tactical Patrol Officers Association. I went down to San Marcos recently and worked down there. And I worked with some of those guys you talked about in Houston, SWAT, Gary Heath, and those guys. I was doing a CQB instructor course. So so I hope to get mixed up with those guys again in some of those regions and get plugged into some of those classes so there can be open enrollment so law enforcement officers can jump in on some of those.
Maybe we'll see each other. I was I was on my way to teach at that event, and we had a mechanical, and so we would have been able to share a drink and reunite there in person. But
I talked to your who'd you bring down? Who was your assistant?
We had there was retired Chief Pearson and Tim Pipes.
Tim, I met Tim. I met Tim. We talked a couple of different times, and we were trying to catch up and trying to figure out where your mechanical was and if you were coming or not. So
I know it was a nightmare. It was crazy. But anyways, hey man, you stay safe, and we'll definitely see each other on the road.
Thanks very much, Tony, for your time, and appreciate it, Coach, and always continued success for you too.
Be safe, man.
All right, cheers.